Welcome back. You're watching Sunday edition here on KTN News. This is Kenya's first and only Sunday morning political show. Right now, we want to talk about the politics of the capital city county of Nairobi going into the August 2017 general election. And to put that into perspective, let's start with the story analysis done by KTN News reporter Moremi Mwangi on what next in terms of the latest entrant into the gubernatorial race, that is Peter Kenneth, and what that has to do with Murang'a politics. Let's take a look at that.
Rumored in political circles as a possible successor to President Uhuru Kenyatta as the Central Kenya kingpin post-2022, former Gatanga MP Peter Kenneth appears to have walked straight into a political storm in his quest to unseat Nairobi Governor Dr. Evans Kidero. The attacks coming from his newfound home of the Jubilee Party over the 2013 presidential election when Kenneth ran against Kenyatta.
Tukiwa na kesi ya ICC, tulipigwa na watu wengine ambao hata ni watu ambao wangekuwa na support Uhuru hapa. Dada yetu Karua na ndugu yetu Peter Kenneth.
Ananiambia Sonko, ile pesa ya wazungu ambayo bado wako nayo, acha nipatie bilioni 1 niwache wananchi wa Nairobi nimuuzie kiti.
Why would I bribe anybody for anything? My friend, do you know what $1 billion shilling is and how many Kenyans would be in position of $1 billion?
As the latest entrant to the Nairobi race, Kenneth will have to fight for the Jubilee Party ticket against Nairobi Senator Mike Sonko, nominated MP Johnson Sakaja, Dagoretti South MP Dennis Waweru, and former Starehe MP Bishop Margaret Wanjiru. The four have coalesced under the umbrella of Team Nairobi. Kenneth, on the other hand, seemingly enjoys the support of Nairobi woman representative Rachel Shebesh and Waweru's former close ally, Starehe MP Maina Kamanda.
They endorsed Malwa. They have moved and endorsed Peter Kenneth. We don't know where they're going next. I hope I'm next in line.
Many are rattled with my candidature. They would like to put all manner of spanners in the works. I think the most important element for me would be to see Jubilee Party win 2017 elections.
He owes Kenyans an apology. Sisi tumesikizana kama team, tukiwa na Sakaja, tukiwa na Sonko, tukiwa na Wanjiro, na tumesema yoyote atakuwa sawa.
But while the top Jubilee leadership has reportedly been rooting for a negotiated arrangements among the 5 aspirants to prevent a fallout way before the nominations, the Sonko-led team is said to be keen on a face-off through nominations, so that the number 2 candidate automatically becomes the running mate to the gubernatorial aspirant. But Kenneth could be facing a predicament similar to that of Water Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa, who was labeled an outsider soon after he declared interest in the city governorship. Wamalwa is said to enjoy immense support from Ruto's handlers. Kenneth, on the other hand, has the backing of Murang'a leaders. Some observers argue that Kenneth's entry could be part of a more fierce backroom tussle for Uhuru's succession, should he recoup his second and final presidential term.
If it is an issue of the flag bearer in 2022, with respect to whoever is going to be the deputy president's running mate, there are so many candidates, me included. All right, so there is nothing that we should actually be thinking about Peter Kenneth in Nairobi. All right, even if Peter Kenneth is not in Nairobi, Jamlek is in Murang'a.
What people are against is imposition of any specific candidate, is candidates being told that you're from the wrong community, and that's propaganda, because I can assure you that is not the language of President Uhuru Kenyatta or Deputy President William Ruto.
In 2013, Kenneth emerged fourth with 72,786 votes. Of these, only 15,662 were from Nairobi. By December last year, there were 1.8 million registered voters in Nairobi, with the ongoing mass voter registration targeting some 900,000 fresh voters.
Tulishinda wards 43, lakini kama tulikuwa tumejipanga vizuri, tungeshinda wards mingi. Na hii uchaguzi ambayo inakuja, tuhakikishe tuwe na kura ambayo itatuwezesha kushinda.
Now, with Jubilee keen to wrestle the capital city gubernatorial position from CORD and with their opposition counterparts not willing to let go, the ongoing realignments will no doubt continue as the jostle for the 2017 vote gains momentum. Muremi Mwangi, KTN News in Nairobi.
Thank you very much for that analysis. Let's now talk about the politics of the capital city county of Nairobi. And so, in 2013, Jim Nambaro and Ferdinand Waitito couldn't agree on one of them, and that is what analysts say that's how Kidero won the governorship. There are so many interests this month, especially on the Jubilee side. So many people want to unseat Governor Kidero. What do you see happening in 7 months' time?
Now, the Jubilee Constitution says that for them to get a candidate, it could be either through consensus or nomination. So that's very important. So it's not the case that you're going to have a nomination in Nairobi through the open contest. Probability of that happening is almost zero. They're going to get a candidate through consensus. So that's the first thing. Then the second thing, it's unlikely that Peter Kenneth would be so naive just to join a political party without having met with the shareholders. And the Jubilee has got only 2 shareholders, the president and his deputy. Those are the ones who take the decisions. So any other person here in Nairobi trying to make noise and jump all over, they have to go back to the president and his deputy and seek for their guidance. And when you look at Peter Ken and his body language, he's so comfortable in his scheme that he must have spoken either with the president or the deputy, and he has been given several reassurances. And I've got information to the effect that the Nairobi lineup for Jubilee has actually been agreed upon. That probability of Peter Ken being the candidate for governor's seat is almost 1. The other aspirants have been told now to accept that, to start living with reality. For instance, Shebesh is not going to be defending her seat. She's going to be coordinating the Jubilee campaigns in Nairobi, and Emilio Manga is going to be their candidate. So this thing is actually a wrap. And I think the earlier, the better for Team Sakai, or rather, Team Nairobi to come and appreciate reality. When you get somebody like Sonko claiming that it's so powerful in Nairobi, and when you look at the difference between the votes that President Kenyatta got and Sonko, it's a difference of 150,000 votes. Meaning that Sonko got all the votes that Kenyatta got, but he did not transfer his votes to President Kenyatta. So if he starts issuing threats at this stage, it's very easy for President Kenyatta to ask him to take a walk.
All right.
So for this one, the die has been cast. But unfortunately, Ben, is when all this is taking place, nobody's talking about Wanjiku. They're just talking about their selfish interest, and Wanjiku is not in the picture. For the case of ODM, Dr. Evans Kidero has been underwhelming in Nairobi. That is done the bare minimum, and it's really going to be a disappointment that even ODM is going to nominate him to compete with Peter Ken.
All right. Bonke, is what this was saying a fact that it only matters what the president and deputy president have to say? Seeing as the Water Secretary, Eugene Wamala, was touted to be being fronted by the deputy president, but he seems not to have been accepted by Nairobi people. I don't know who these Nairobi people are. So what does it take to name the Jubilee aspirants?
First of all, allow me to disqualify his sentiment by saying that Jubilee has only 2 partners. That is the president and the deputy. Jubilee Party is a national party, and anyone in Jubilee who is registered as a member has shares. We don't have only 2 shareholders like CORD or ODM. Jubilee is a national party, and all Kenyans have shares. Secondly, we are privileged to have 5 competent candidates in Nairobi. And if you check their track record in terms of development, speaks for itself. The only confusion we don't want, because our focus is to campaign for the re-election of our president, we want our candidates because they have massive...
You don't want Nairobi?
We want Nairobi, and this is now my point. 5 of them will need only 2 people. That is now the governor and his running mate. And now 5 of them, this issue coming from among the 5 candidates we have as Jubilee by calling some Nairobians is discriminative, it is unconstitutional, and also lack of historical research. If I start with Mheshimiwa Peter Kenneth, and they're saying he's Nairobian, no, I'm not supporting Peter Kenneth, but Peter Kenneth went to Bahati Primary. After that, he went to Starehe Center, and after Starehe, he went to Nairobi University, and he grew up in Eastlands. So all of us, no one, his grandfather or her grandfather was brought up in Nairobi. We are all foreigners, and we are just here to seek for day to day what we can eat for today. Now, what I want to assure Kenyans, and especially Nairobians, we are happy because this is the only democratic party which has allowed 5 able men and a woman to contest for the gubernatorial race of Nairobi. We know the problems we are facing, of which I don't want to talk about that right now, and the high level of incompetence of the current governor. Recently, we lost over 20 billion Kenya shillings under the leadership of CORD and ODM. So Nairobi is the capital city.
Do you have
yes,
evidence to that?
It's on record. It's on record.
All right.
It's on record. And again,
let me bring in Jared.
Ben, let me finish. And again, in 2 to 3 weeks' time, we are going to present our candidate among the 5. The politics we don't want to see in Jubilee, especially for the governors, the aspirants, this issue of fighting one another, of which it is quite bad.
There seems to be 2 sides pulling in 2 different directions.
Jubilee A and Jubilee B.
There is no Jubilee A, there is no Jubilee B. What is there is just, it's just interest of each and every personality among the candidates. So what we are assuring them, we have the support in Nairobi, and all 16 seats in Nairobi, we have to take all of them. And we should not only discuss governors, even the women rep, the senator of Nairobi, and among them we know, if we give one as the governor, the senator is obvious, the women rep is obvious. Then we come back to MPs and county reps.
Jared, Nairobi politics, what do you see happening?
Well, Ben, history will vindicate me that since the very first multi-party election of 1992 to this very day, my brothers and sisters from Central Province have never cast any vote to anybody outside the ancestry of Central Kenya. Now, what you see is actually politics of 2022. One thing that is for certain is that when Uhuru Kenyatta retires in 2022, Central Kenya is angling Peter Kenneth to take over from the reins of Uhuru Kenyatta, because they have never known how to cast votes.
Are you accepting that President Uhuru Kenyatta will win in 2017?
Yes, he has already accepted.
No, I mean, I'm saying they are angling. All these are political, mathematics that they are playing about with.
Right.
So this is how they plan to do it. They know that Nairobi is such a powerful county. Nairobi is actually, if you become Nairobi governor, for instance, today, you naturally become number 3 in the executive hierarchy. After president, you have deputy president and Nairobi governor. Because of the revenues it controls, the large economic pie it has, and most importantly, when foreigners worth talking about are here, then the Nairobi governor has to be present. So that brings you very close to power. So they know that the easiest way of Peter Kenneth ascending to presidency is to bring him in Nairobi, make him the governor, and at the same time then start negotiating for the next elections, which is now in 2022. Now, of course, they are saying that he's not very black enough to be called a Kikuyu, and he's not very white enough to be sidelined from being a Kikuyu. So it's like Obama pedigree. So they will say that, here we have another Obama in the name of Peter Kenneth. And he doesn't have even a Kikuyu name. I doubt if he does. So all these are political machinations.
Ben, I'm Bonke Komwai. Bonke is a German name. Komwai is a Maasai name.
Well, you're not running for anything.
so for you to be elected as someone in the world of politics, you must have your tribal name.
So,
Jared, this is impunity.
So Ben,
finish.
So then that is exactly what they're doing. When a while back, the deputy president came out and said that we are not going to pass Nairobi gubernatorial position to the opposition again. He has said that before. Last week, the president was in this vernacular radio station called Kameme. And he did indicate that Nairobi is going to be a war, that Jubilee must seize that position to its gain. So all these are made up in order that Peter Kenneth can move very close to power. And we can bet that Nairobi governor under Jubilee banner will be none other than Peter Kenneth.
All right, I'll let you hold that thought. Let's bring in a view from outside Nairobi, that is from the county of Uasin Gishu. And Benson, what's your take on this battle for Nairobi between Jubilee and CORD for now?
Ben, there is no question there is a lot of interesting development in Nairobi. I think when you look at the Songo-led faction and the Peter Kenneth, the both groups actually appeal differently. The challenge now will be them to unite. If you read today's Daily, and I'm sure you guys have gone through, even the president himself is concerned that if there will be division in the Jubilee, then they actually may risk losing the Nairobi gubernatorial race. And don't always underestimate the power of the incumbency. I mean, as much as some of the things may have been said about finances and everything, but when it comes to the end, always whoever is united towards the end. What happened to Jubilee during the 2013 elections, you can see. And there is no question also there is a section of Nairobi that actually wants serious leadership in that city. That is the opening where we want to transform Nairobi. And I think whoever is going to emerge in Jubilee will determine who will be the governor in Nairobi. If it is going to be a Songo, there are serious people who really want to see Nairobi get transformed to one of the major cities, in the best infrastructure. It is a challenge, and as we watch the unfoldings, I think it is going to be very interesting. The very important thing is just for Jubilee to be united and find candidates that can represent the first, like one of your panelists has said, is going to be third in command, which is very true.
All right. Thanks, Benson. Brian, how much power does Minor Commander wield, and why is Jubilee pulling in two different directions?
It's not pulling in two different directions. It's just a vicious fight for people who want to be the Jubilee candidate for the governorship position, which is normal in any political party. You see, for a party to thrive, it needs aspirants. And you give a buffet to Raya to choose from that group. And once a candidate is presented, now we will have to face the incumbent who has performed dismally in running Nairobi. So what is happening in Jubilee is people fighting for their space. Because they say there's a new entrant who's an outsider. The other one claim is not an outsider, is in Jubilee. You see, as Jubilee, we are a big house and we can accommodate all of them. What we are trying to urge them is that in politics, if you have 5 contestants, you are 100% sure of 4 will lose, 1 will win. So we are telling the 4, just come close to reality. Talk to one another. Look at your chances, and then...
Is there a danger of one of them refusing to toe the line and splitting the vote?
Let me tell you for a fact, if you look at 2013 election, all the county position, Jubilee candidates other than Waititu got over 650,000 votes. Waititu got 630. So, at least in Nairobi, we are assured of a block of over 650,000 votes for Jubilee, whoever got Jubilee votes. Sonko got a top-up. From
about 150,000 votes.
About 150,000 votes, and yet called Ugali, because in Nairobi, for you to be elected, you have to be in either of the two coalitions. No independent will find his way in Nairobi. For ODM, the governorship position is locked. So even if they run away to other parties, for governorship, it is locked. They can't go there and dislodge Kidero. So the only place remaining is Jubilee. So they have to sit together and agree. Who will go to
allow me to buttress that point. All these candidates who want to run on a Jubilee ticket in Nairobi, none of them has got political capital in Nairobi. They will be relying on the president and his deputy. That's why President Kenyatta and his deputy are going to determine who is going to be the Jubilee candidate in Nairobi. And that's why, in fact, they've already determined the lineup. So when you see all these teams now running around and trying to make noise, it's like when you go to an hospital and you've been told that you've got a terminal disease. So it takes you a bit of time to actually accept reality. Maybe you need to look for Dr. Frank Njenga. That's the reason why they're trying to jump around. Like, for instance, the way Peter Kenneth has indicated, Who would in Kenya would like to give Sonko $1 billion for him to give him a seat, as if he's holding the seat, it's a title deed? So these guys are just jumping all over, knowing very well that there are the two shareholders, and Bonke cannot mislead anybody. There are only two shareholders in Jubilee. The rest are just been invited to the party.
You know, Dismas cannot purport to speak on behalf of Jubilee, because the other time he was saying that
Jubilee
has settled on Wamalwa, now he's saying he's settled.
He's my political analyst. He can be in the know. But let me ask you, what happens? What happens? Let's throw a spanner in the works. If the powers that be in Jubilee, like Dismas is saying, if it's true, and they say Peter Kenneth is the man for us, and the Nairobi Senator Sonko says, no, then I'll go it alone. What does that?
Yeah, you see, this issue, Peter is saying that the president or the deputy will determine who to be our gubernatorial candidate in Nairobi. That is purely dictatorship. Jubilee, our leaders are no dictators, and the president said this on a national TV.
Does it normally mean what he says?
Yeah, that is now being personal. The instructions our candidate has is to go to the Nairobi residents, to talk to them, sell their policies. Then we have our ears, we have our eyes, we will see. We will use our own scientific method to know who has the majority, who has won the hearts of Nairobians. Then that's the person. In our party, Wananchi has a voice more than the party leaders. It's not like what is happening in ODM, where they have candidates and they have some shops at Orange House selling their certificates. So that one we don't have in Jubilee. You go to the people, sell your policy. When they say even if our candidate is disabled, that is the candidate. And that's the person we are going to drum support behind. So in this party, there is nothing like your name, you are going to sleep with the certificate after other candidates have paid their money to commit, then people are busy campaigning and someone is sleeping with this certificate and Rwanda. Right. That one is not there in Jubilee.
Let's talk about the presidential vote in Nairobi. Jared, where does that leave the opposition and Jubilee? Who has...
The opposition won in 2013 in terms of numerical strength. Raila Odinga got more votes than Uhuru Kenyatta. And nothing much has changed. In any event, we have gained. So we are very sure that Uhuru Kenyatta will still lose, and lose big time in Nairobi. But I want to add on to one fundamental point on what you are talking about, gubernatorial position. At the very onset of Uhuru's presidency, people like Sonko were very close to the president. In fact, they hanged around him all the time. But, you know, the executive and the powers have a way of churning out and sieving noisemakers so that you technically get removed from the establishment. Because there are many things that happen with the executive. The power has to be protected, the power has to be seen to be disciplined, and the power has to portray and posture itself as the best in the world. So by pushing out Sonko at the initial stages of Uhuru's presidency is indeed a testament that they really have him out completely into the gubernatorial position in Nairobi. And as I said, nothing fundamental can happen here in Nairobi without the participation of the governor. And you need people who don't come in, torn pants and would want to somersault on the streets and punch walls. You don't need that when it comes to power. And as I said, power has a way of identifying those who can, take the posture of statesmanship and at the same time...
But you also can't rubbish Sonko's numbers.
And ask him punching a wall and slapping a woman in public. Your governor slapped our county women in town and everyone knows about that.
Yes, so that is why I'm saying, if you really have to look around those who have expressed interest to run under Jubilee, then I think everything is pointing towards Peter Kenneth. When we have to look at how best to run, and Peter Kenneth is coming from some little history. In the year 2003, when they first launched the CDF kitty, Peter Kenneth's constituency was voted the best in the country in terms of usage of those funds. And remember, at the time, the funds were not as much as they are today. He was number one. But you can also say that Gatanga is such a small constituency compared to Nairobi. But at least he has expressed, some managerial skills in terms of public funds and usage of public money.
Right.
So I think he has something to run about. But most fundamentally, politics in Kenya is tribal. And that is why, you know, you had Waititu and Jim Nambaru. If both combined their efforts, then I think Kidero would not be the governor today.
All right.
So because politics is tribal, Peter Kenneth is now coming into the city to marshal troops behind him in the name of Kikuyu votes. And perhaps, you never know.
All right. Brian, presidential race. Has anything changed much since 2013?
You know, Nairobi, I call it 50-50. When you look at the number of MPs, Jubilee has 9, ODM has 8. When you look at MCS, ODM has 43, Jubilee has 42. When you look at the last presidential election, President Uhuru had 659, Raila Odinga had 672.
91.
91. So you can tell the margin is small. And a spike in turn-up and a few votes that have been consolidated in the city, it's anyone's game. That's why it's a battleground for both Jubilee and CORD. It's not cast on stone. It's not a guarantee that either side will take it. That's why we are pushing for it. As Jubilee, we want it all.
Has any side changed, encroach on the other's support base since in the last 4 years or so?
Probably for the first time, I'll agree with Brian, and I think ODM has really suffered because what Dr. Kidera has done in Nairobi is a very strong indication of the way you don't want a city to be managed, and that can easily be translated to a presidency. Because you cannot be telling people that if I become a president as Raila Odinga, I'm going to run Kenya in a particular direction. Yes, the governors under your control have not done anything remarkable. If you look at all the counties and you look at their governors and you are trying to look for impunity, mediocrity, and corruption, that's where most of it is domiciled. For instance, people in Nairobi have no access to safe drinking water, there's water rationing, there's all manner of mischief, there's traffic, and if you have a governor and a political party which cannot even manage traffic in Nairobi, how would you be able to trust them with national leadership? That would be one variable. However, then there's the issue of corruption, which has affected the national government. And the majority of the people who feel corruption at the national government are residents in Nairobi. For instance, his party leader has been unable to sort out the healthcare crisis. People in Nairobi, they're dying. You go to Pumwani, there's no facility. You go to any hospital, it doesn't work. Teachers, university teachers are going on strike. So there are all these kind of things which people will be protesting at. So it's a very tight call.
Allow me to respond to that first.
Yes.
You know, Dismas is a knowledgeable person, and I'm sure he has read the Constitution, and he knows that healthcare was devolved. So in fact, what the national government is trying to do is just to midwife, because you cannot purport to speak on behalf of county governments and sign deal with them, yet the payroll is with the governors. What I can advise these union officials, for medical union officials, they go directly to individual governors and negotiate with them.
All right.
The only thing that can negotiate with national government is only Kenyatta doctors and Moi doctors. Everything, you should put blame squarely to every person who's supposed to take care of that.
Okay, but let me go back to my point here. Why is the national government retaining a huge budget at the headquarters, at the Ministry of Health in Nairobi, yet it's supposed to be only taking policies?
It's very simple.
And then
it's very simple. Let me respond. You know, public health issue, like sanitation, everything is in the national government. The free maternity issue is in the national government, which is a project for the national government. That's where that money is there. The research and everything is in the national government.
And then who gets those contracts?
You know, Kenyatta and Moi is like half the hospitals in Kenya.
Ben, let me explain something on that. It is true that health is devolved, and that is clearly espoused into the Constitution. But this is what they have done. The Constitution is clear on what the national government should do, which is purely supervisory. Now, when you talk about a supervisory or administrative functions in the health docket, then the national government doing that ought to have retained 20% of the health budget. But this is what they have done. They have reversed. They have only taken 20% to handle health issues at the county and retained 80% in the name of administrative and supervisory costs. And that is where the problem is. That is why when doctors are on strike, the buck stops with the executive where the money is.
You know, Ben, you should not allow propaganda in your show, because let me say something. You know, you cannot tell me that 80% of the money is retained at the county level, at the national level. The same way you thought that the Ministry of Devolution was supposed to handle, it was retaining more money instead of giving it to the counties. Go to the constitution, look at the functions of the national government and the county government. Payroll, you remember in 2013, governors requested everything to be handed over to them, including doctors' payroll. That's where the rain started beating us. And if you can ask any doctor, like the teachers who their payroll is the national government, they will love to come back.
All right, we
to
are
the
getting a
national
bit
government.
off topic, but let me let Bonke say something.
Based on
Go
the
to Benson.
performance of the current county government of Nairobi, it's quite disappointing. If you look at the askaris we have today in Nairobi County, we just have hooligans stealing from Kenyans, innocent Kenyans, walking the streets. Secondly, look at Nairobi. Nairobi is the dirtiest city in Eastern Central Africa. You can't even compare Nairobi with Kigali, Rwanda. We've lost the glory of Nairobi. And now the corruption in the county government of Nairobi is quite disgusting. Now, what we are trying to, I heard Jared saying that some of our candidates, and is trying to brand Jubilee as we have violent candidates. If you have a man who can punch the concrete wall than a man who is slapping a woman, you are going to present your issues you have, and the only greeting he gave Shebesh was a slap. So between Kidero and Sonko, because he was referring that to Sonko, who should be jailed?
So are we talking about two evils? And
Not two evils. Sonko was just demonstrating his anger on a
let me get Benson's view on this, and we are getting a bit off topic.
Just a quick one, Ben, before he comes in.
Yes.
He said that happened,
women
but immediately the governor
not forgiven Kidero for that.
That's fine. Immediately the governor was asked. 15 minutes later, he said he couldn't remember. Now, the aggressor was, the person who was, beaten was their own, Rachel Shebesh. She never went to court, she never filed any petition, and we've never had anything concerning that issue. So why should it bother him so much?
Maybe the husband has never even slapped Shebesh.
At the center of
this.
There
had no right to slap a honorable elected member of the National Assembly.
Let me tell you, Ben, the Constitution
we
is
know
clear
violence in ODM.
that you can even file a case on behalf of Rachel Shebesh. Bonke has not done that.
So yes, all right. All right, Benson, let's step away from Kidero and Shebesh for a while. And we are talking about the presidential votes. What is your take on, you did tell us about the gubernatorial race, Jubilee and CORD and all that. What about the presidential vote in August in Nairobi? Do you think any of the absolute numbers recorded in 2013, have changed in the last 4 years or so?
Ben, I think it will be completely different election. Nairobi, as most of your guests have said today, it's going to be a battleground state, and I think it will come down to mobilization and also the frontline candidates in the different aspects, from the gubernatorial to the senators to the MPs. Nairobi is such an important county, like most of you guys have said there, that any person that will be at the upfront there may determine which swing it might go. Peter Kenneth actually represents a very good image. There is no question he has what it takes to take Nairobi to a different level.
Right.
Now, as far as the presidential, it is going to be probably very thin margin that may determine who might take the presidency, actually.
All right, that on the presidential vote. Gentlemen, let's talk about maybe you did talk about who gets Nairobi in terms of the parliamentary seats. You said Jubilee has 9, ODM, the CORD side has 8. Let's talk about one of those, and that is Kibra constituency, currently being represented in the National Assembly by Ken Okoth. And there has been, it has been touted that Rosemary Odinga will be running for this. Former right-hand man of Raila Odinga, Owalo, will also be running for this. And of course, there's the incumbent. And yesterday there was a statement purportedly from Eliud Owalo saying that Raila should say if he wants to influence the outcome of Kibera, then he should forget about the presidential vote. That sounded like a subtle kind of threat. What is your take on what happens in Kibera? What do you think should happen? Rosemary Odinga, should Raila Odinga endorse Rosemary Odinga?
Well, first of all, let me admit that Edwin Owalo is my senior in high school. So maybe my views about you may not be exactly objective. But I think it's bad manners for Mr. Raila Odinga to try and impose Rosemary Odinga as a candidate in Kibra. That's an indication of a gentleman who is very greedy, because his brother is in the National Assembly nominated. One wonders what kind of interest he's representing at the National Assembly. Then he's got a sister who is the deputy governor in Kisumu. So it's really bad manners for you to try and ensure that all members of your family are in elective seats. And if Mr. Raila Odinga is interested in running for the presidency, he must actually stay focused on the presidency and stop antagonizing people in Kibera. Because if he goes to Kibera and endorses Rosemary Odinga, probability of her winning is almost 1 because of the irrational support he's got in that part of the world. And in the next National Assembly, I suspect Mr. Odinga would need very serious political assets in the National Assembly. The current MP is doing very well, but in my view, having known Owalo for a long time, he's got the intellectual infrastructure that you need in the National Assembly. If you put him in any committee, he'll be able to take on 10 Jubilee MPs at one go because of his intellectual infrastructure. But the idea of the Prime Minister, he wants to create a political legacy and he's going to impose the daughter, I think is really unacceptable. And court strategists must have the guts to tell him that Mr. Raila Odinga, this is unacceptable.
Bonke, is this potential crisis where Jubilee comes in and tries to, or do you think Kibra is just a no-go zone?
You'll allow me to disagree with my brother Peter. Rosemary Odinga has the constitutional right to vie for any elective post in this country. The fact that she's the grandchild of Jaramogi Oginga Odinga and the daughter of former Prime Minister Raila Gwambo, that should not disqualify her to seek for any elective post. Rosemary, she's a role model to many. Actually, I respect and I like her so much. Rosemary can be a role model to my daughter. So we should not block Rosemary because she's the daughter of Raila Amolo Odinga. I'm a politician. I would love my kid to whoever who can like to follow my footsteps. And if you look at Kibra constituency, you know, Kibra, especially Katwekera, because the politics of Langata have been there before. I've been into ODM politics and all that. Kibra is the backbone of Raila's politics. And again, anyone has to protect his or her interest. And I heard Jared saying I'm not vying. How comes he knows that I'm going to Kibra? I would like Rosemary just to go to Kibra to fight for our own space. I may come there. So what Kibra people should do, they need to elect a leader who understands their problems. They need to elect a leader who has a manifesto to reform the lives of Kibra. And this will bring me back to the NYS initiative. Yes, it was politicized, there was corruption allegations, but the concept was fantastic to help common wananchi, the lower income Kenyans. And if a member of parliament can pick the policies of Jubilee we had to reform our slums in Kenya, that shall be the best member of parliament for Kibra. Rosemary should go for it. I fully support her. Owalo is just trying to make noise. And actually, that's how he's going to be dismissed in ODM politics as far as
You're
politics.
supporting a potential ODM candidate.
Oh yes, that is a democratic right. No, I'm not going tribal. Are you trying to tell me that the president's son, the current president's son, cannot vie for any elective post?
Fair enough. Jared, what do you think about
We need to be rational.
Kibra?
Well, thank you, Ben. Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga
his form
has not imposed
we don't have a Prime Minister
Rosemary Odinga on the people of Kibra. At no given time has he gone to Kibra to tell them to vote for Rosemary Odinga. He has left it for the people of Kibra to decide. But this is what the Constitution says in Article 38, sub-article 3C, that everybody, an adult citizen, has a right to be a candidate for any elective position or to be a candidate in a position within the party that the candidate belongs to. And this must be done without any unreasonable caveats or unreasonable intricacies. That must be taken good care of. That unreasonable intricacies is what we are now trying to discuss. That would then Raila Odinga, being a Kenyan citizen and perhaps a presidential candidate, impose her daughter on the people? Or can Raila Odinga's son or daughter run for an elective position? Now, if we have to discuss people on that basis, then we are already touching on unconstitutionality of what Article 38, sub-Article 3C tells us. So she's 39 years of age, so she definitely qualifies. She's an adult, and she's lived around that area, so she understands the intricacies of Kibra. And nothing really stops Rosemary from participating in this particular election.
I agree.
What we need to enhance, just a minute, what we only need to enhance, and Raila Odinga has spoken about this times more than number, that nominations will be free and fair. If that is what is going to be practiced, then I don't see why Owalo would be wallowing in fear.
All right, but he shouldn't. Should he say Rosemary Tosha? Like, you know,
Raila will not do that. That you can take to the bank. He's not going to do that. He will only do so when the nominations are over and Jubilee has another candidate competing against ODM. Then Raila will have to go around to this candidate.
Now, you know, just to say this, Owalo has been an insider in ODM. He was the campaign manager for Raila in 2013. And in his wisdom, he knows how ODM certificates are distant. He's aware how they're distant. And I can say, for Raila to endorse Rosemary, it doesn't have to be publicly. He can call all the opinion leaders at his house and tell them, this is the candidate. We know his schemes most of the time. And it will be sad to lose such an MP like Ken Okoth, who has done a lot for the people of Kibra, and I think to me is the best performing MP so far we have. And yet ODM claims they want to remove Jubilee from power to bring in competent leaders. We had Raphael Tuju in Rarieda. He was good in his developmental record, but since he was not singing Baba song, he was chased out of the party. So this shows what ODM want. It's not about development, it's not about good governance, it's about Raila Odinga and his family.
Would Jubilee try to have a candidate to rival?
Always have.
Do you dream of maybe winning?
We will take that seat. Let them
just allow me to make a point.
Yes,
From a technical perspective, that's looking at the Constitution or even the Bible or the Quran, Rosemary Odinga as a Kenyan has got the responsibility or right to run for any political seat. She can even decide to run again as the father, if the father is the NASA presidential candidate. Right. That one is in order. But looking at the philosophy or the morality of it, why would one family want to spread tentacles across the entire nation? Why can't they leave another person to share the cake? Because as Abraham has indicated, Raila Odinga must not go to Kibera and say Rosemary Odinga Tosha. The fact that she is campaigning using the name Rosemary Odinga, that is sufficient. Some things are very implicit, others are very explicit. For this one, it's very explicit. There's no way you'll go there with the entire Nairobi brigade with Bon Kalwale in tow, and then you claim that Mr. Raila Odinga is not aware. The question I'd like to ask Jared, was Raila Odinga surprised to watch that event on news, just like any other normal Kenyan, and they said, wow, my daughter is running in Kibera? No way.
Well, I wasn't with him at the time, but this is most important. Dismas is practicing selective amnesia here. When the current president, who is a son to the former president, is in office, he doesn't have any problem with that. When Gideon Moi's son represents Baringo Central as its senator, he doesn't have any problem with that. The problem is that Raila Odinga's daughter is now running for political office. You know, that is unconstitutional. We have to really place the Constitution where it belongs. Otherwise, if we have to muddle the Constitution with intricacies, and even if you practice in a court of law, Article 159 of the Constitution says the judges will pronounce judgments without looking at technical, procedural technicalities. So that is there, and it is also applies in Article 38C, 3C, which I stated. So if the Constitution has already given protection to Rosemary, who are we, therefore, to start punching holes on her candidates?
All this is constitutional. And before I get Benson's comment, one question that has been very consistent from our viewers on social media, especially asking me to ask whenever we talk about this is this country only about two families? Is it a dynasty? I mean, it's a very genuine question.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And Brian's political party has been running adverts and conversations on vernacular stations and telling people in parts of central Kenya to go and register, not because they're supposed to exercise, their civil rights, but because they want to protect a kingdom. And really, that's bad manners. That's not the way we are supposed to grow a nation. The fact that we are not discussing Senator Moi and the brother does not mean that that's our best practice. We are looking at the case of Rosemary Odinga right now, because it would just be an irrational man who would imagine that Rosemary Odinga would just wake up in the middle of the night and decide, I want to be the MP for Kibera.
All right.
I'm not going to consult anyone.
Let's get a view from outside Nairobi again, from Benson. Benson, should Raila Odinga endorse publicly, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to verify that, his daughter to vie for Kibra?
Well, with or without the endorsement, the Odinga family already have a name recognition. It is more like just the Bush family in the U.S. They have run every single race, from the governorship to the presidency. And there is that advantage that you have when you have such a name recognition in this country, just like the Mois, the Kenyattas. She has every right to run in any office, in anywhere she chooses. For Kibra specifically, I've followed Ken Okoth for some time, and he is a great candidate. He has been a very good member of parliament in some of the projects that he has done. But whether that one is going to be erased by the Odinga factor coming in, regardless whether Odinga endorses or not, once that name just comes in that Rosemary is going to run, it's going to be a huge factor. You cannot take that for granted. She's going to be a huge factor. I hope just the people will see what Ken has done over the period of the last 5 years and realize that this was of development. And if she has policies that will match what Ken has done, then she certainly is going to win.
All right, so she has the right surname, you would say. All right, that's where we leave it on that. Let's talk about, very quickly before we wind up the show, let's talk about the voter registration exercise, which has been ongoing for the last 1 week or so, the final phase of the mass voter registration ahead of the August elections. And let's listen in to what has been ongoing.
Registering a voter takes between 5 minutes and 7 minutes. Okay? So any kit that is working optimally should be able to register 180 persons to even 200.
Kwanza lengo ni kuhakikisha watu wananasa kura. Ukinasa kura, umenasa nguvu.
Katika kaunti ya Uasin Gishu tuko na zaidi ya watu 200,000 wana vitambulisho ili hali hawana kadi ya kura. Na sisi kama wale tunawania viti, tumeona tutachukua hii kwa jukumu letu kuhamasisha wananchi ya kuwa wako na jukumu kama wananchi kufanya uamuzi. Ni nani ataendesha mambo ya Kenya? Ni nani ataendesha mambo ya county? Ni nani ataendesha mambo ya constituency? Ni nani ataendesha mambo ya ward kupitia kwa kura?
Tuwa wamehamahama kwa sababu ya ukame, kuhakikisha kwamba hawa watu tujue ni kina nani wako wapi, ndipo tunaweza kupeleka machines ya kuwasajili watu waende wasajiliwe huko. Kwa hivyo that is one of the strategy. Hiyo ndio plan moja ambayo tumeweka.
Hata fare ya kwenda mahali unasikia ni headquarter, hiyo fare hawana. Na hiyo wakati tena hakuna.
Kwetu ni Kinakop na unajua kura yangu ni hapa. Sasa nitapiga kura nipeleke Isenya, hiyo ni fare. Atanipea fare.
Hii zawadi tunapeana ili tuimize wale ambao hawajachukua waone umuhimu wa kuichukua. Tunawafurahisha ili wafurahi. Lakini hufai kupewa zawadi ndio uchukue kura. Kura ni haki yako na ni lazima uchukue kama umefikisha miaka 18.
Right. Leaders have been traversing this republic to mobilize their supporters to register as voters. There has been what has been called ethnic mobilization. I don't know how wrong or right that is. Let me start with you, Dismas. How would you describe the mobilization so far? Uhuru in Central, Raila all over the place, in Nyanza and all that.
It's actually very impressive that the politicians are taking leadership role in this, because IBC, which is supposed to do the mobilization technically, I think they've got their priorities upside down. So the leaders are doing a very good job. However, the curious thing, Ben, is that while Raila Odinga decided to launch his campaign in Nairobi, the Jubilee Party leader decided to go to Central Province. And I do not recall at any stage in the political space when you've had a president going to launch this kind of a campaign in the village. I did not see that with President Kibaki. I did see that with President Moi. Of course, I was not around to see it with the first head of state. But I think in the spirit of being the symbol of national unity, President Kenyatta shouldn't have launched the campaign in his village. That's an important item. Then number two, the case of massive voter importation, especially from outlying counties to Nairobi, at the end of the day may jeopardize the citizens' ability to vote. Because right now people are importing voters to Nairobi, hoping that they're going to win the party nominations. So if you get people in a truck, say from Kiambu, you bring them to Nairobi, what happens if you don't get your nomination? You'll have no incentive again to give them resources to come to Nairobi. So maybe I think that's something we may need to be addressing in future, so as to ensure that if somebody has brought you to Nairobi, you get the opportunity to exercise your right. And then the issue of family and friends, and we were talking about corruption earlier on. There's a perception that when corruption is taking place in Kenya, the people have been the beneficiaries is a group of family and friends, and that's beginning to affect voter registration, especially in parts of central Kenya. Because we were doing a research last week, and people said, why should I go register as a voter if at the end of the day, the people that are elected into office are the only ones who are going to get access to public resources? They're going to eat the CDF money, they're going to eat the county government money, yes, and more important, national resources. So that's something, again, we need to address through public education.
All right, Bonke, earlier in the week, we got a statement from State House saying that President Uhuru Kenyatta was going on a countrywide tour of mostly central area places.
That's countrywide.
So what's your response to what he said about the president launching or going to central Kenya?
Okay, I said this before. The president started mobilizing Kenyans from where he comes from. President has a village, he has his community. First of all, he has to go there and talk to them, to the elderly people in the language they can understand. That is right, it is biblical. The same thing Raila replicated. And the only person is only Raila and the former Prime Minister and the President who did it. I didn't see that with Kalonzo Musyoka, so I don't know how they are going to balance that.
Kalonzo started in Karen.
But he's a Kamba leader. What our aspirants should do is to take this initiative of mobilization as their responsibility to make work easier. Anyone who's seeking an elective post from the county rep to president should use, because they have resources, they should use their resources to mobilize people within their locality to make it easy. That we are encouraging the opposition, and as we are doing it, and it's quite encouraging, our supporters and those who are shifting to Jubilee based on our manifesto, their people are really casting their votes and registering as voters.
Jared, how do you think this has been done so far from both sides of the political divide?
Well, let me begin by where you started. As Raila Odinga was launching the voter registration exercise in Nairobi, President Uhuru Kenyatta was launching military apparatus at Uhuru Park. In other words, he was reading the Riots Act to us, that should you peaceably demonstrate in Nairobi when the elections are rigged, then be ready for war. We shall receive a thorough beating. That is essentially what
Allow
he
me
was
to
saying.
respond to that.
Let him finish, then let's Brian handle that.
That's pure propaganda.
But this is the second phase of the registration exercise. It began a year ago. It didn't really go very well because we still had pertinent questions on the heads of IEBC commissioners. But now that bottleneck is removed, everybody is now out to mobilize people to register as voters. What is most important is that the next elections will be decided by numbers. Numbers, particularly from the strongholds of these warring factions. That is why Raila Odinga has taken the initiative to drive this, not just within Nairobi. He's going all over this country. He will be in Western Kenya, I think, beginning Tuesday. From Western Kenya, he's moving to Mombasa. He will be northeastern part of Kenya and several other places. So that, when we go there to cast our votes, no Kenyan will be disenfranchised just because he or she doesn't have a voter's card. The president gave a directive yesterday that the National Bureau should only take 3 days to release identification cards. But I think he was only meaning people in central Kenya to receive cards in 3 days. He didn't really say that the Republic of Kenya should be able to have access to this most wonderful objective. So we are asking him to look at Kenya wholesale. He's the president of this country at the moment. At least he has 7 more months to go. But within the 7 months, he has to look at this country as one. So that when people from central Kenya are getting advantage of having ID cards in 3 days, it should also be replicated in Luo Nyanza and many other parts of this country.
All right, Brian?
No, I think Jared is running on an empty tank because when you see the statistic, Western Kenya has more ID cards without voter registration than Central Kenya. That does not mean that the president discriminated the issuers of ID to Western Kenya, or let's say Coast or Central. On the issue of president going to launch the voter registration drive in Central Kenya, I'd like to ask the gentleman here. Raila Odinga votes in Nairobi. William Ruto votes in Uasin Gishu. Uhuru votes in Kiambu. What is wrong with them going back to where they cast their votes to start the mobilization from there? Number two, when you talk about strongholds, you say Central Kenya is Jubilee, Nyanza is CORD. People are firing back their bases first. You know, they say charity begins at home. You go home first, consolidate your base, then walk out. It will be foolish. Let me not say that statement.
All right. Yeah. Benson, how has the mobilization of Kenyans in the North Rift been to register as voters from where you are? If you can just tell us.
Yes, Ben, I would like to disagree with one of your panelists there that the directive by the president was focused only on the central. I listened to what the president said, and I think he said all chiefs to release ID cards to every single person that is sitting. And actually he said the chiefs have to go and look for these people. It is not that they have to come to the chief's office. So I think this is misrepresentation of what the president said. There is serious mobilization here in North Rift. The deputy president was in some parts of Baringo. He was in parts of Elgeyo Marakwet yesterday, and I think he's still in these parts. Everybody is firing their own base, just like everyone Raila is going to be in several parts. That is where you begin first. It's a month-long process. It has started, but you can see it is picking up. You begin with your base first, and then make sure that everybody is on the line. And then when you go to other regions, each and every, I think some of these parties have their own strategy. And here in North Rift, it's actually going very smoothly. Like I began the program by saying there's general apathy in some parts. People are very slow to it. I talked to some of the Electoral Commission, IEBC registers yesterday, and they said that this is a slow process. But the mobilization for sure is taking shape. And I think within the next, by the time the exercise is done, we should have a good number of people registered. The only worry is the ID cards, because are they going to be distributed on timely manner to make sure that it is facilitated? Now, that is the question of the directive of the president. And here in North Rift, actually, it is going on very well.
All right. Yeah, and I think it's a good thing that the leaders are doing it for IBC to be able to get these 4 to 6 million new voters. I want us to talk about, we only have less than 10 minutes, this issue of ethnic mobilization. We have had these reports by radio stations, a lot of claims or accusations going against vernacular radio stations in central Kenya. Message saying that let's come out in large numbers, let's protect Udamaki. Is there anything constitutionally wrong with that? Let me start with you, Brian.
Let me say this. Sometimes we watched the ICC proceedings and we saw a translator translating some issues from Kiswahili to English, and we wondered if they comprehend what Kiswahili means.
All right.
Udamaki means
kingship.
Not kingship, fishing. Damaki means fish. U means fishing. It's like telling people, instead of giving you resources, let's give you nets, you go fish. Mm-hmm. So you can choose whatever meaning you want to put to it.
So Udamaki didn't mean leadership in this?
It's up to you to choose whichever meaning you take to it. Number two, those ethnic radio stations, they speak that language. So they can only address those people in those language. I saw some people on social media complaining that President went to Kameme, but he can only speak Kikuyu. I don't know if he can speak in Masai and go to a Masai radio station. Right. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Fair enough.
In fact, what I can say is when you talk about Kiambu, it's predominantly 80% or 90% Kikuyu. Yes. When you talk about a certain county, it was wrong for how the boundaries were created, but the boundaries kept us in our ethnic context.
Jared, this happens across the board, vernacular, stations and all. Is there anything wrong with it?
Well, firstly, Ben, before I get to this vernacular station thing, it is true that the president's appointee in the name of Cabinet Secretary for Interior did say and fired a warning shot to chiefs and their assistants in opposition strongholds not to get engaged into this registration exercise. And that was very clear. Now, it is very unconstitutional for people to use political invectives to, mobilize people to register as voters. When somebody comes out to say that we must protect our kingship, so come out to cast your vote. In other words, they are sidelining other regions of Kenya. And that has been part and parcel of this Jubilee's administration, that they only recognize themselves and themselves alone. When you have ascended to the office of the presidency, you have the national cake with you. You have to distribute it evenly across the nation. So those particular, hatred-laced words from these vernacular stations, I think National Integration and Cohesion Commission by Ole Kaparo needs to move forward and have those people arrested, be charged in a court of law, because we are still in a very precarious position as a nation. We have not forgotten what happened to us in 2007, 2008. And such are the words that act as a precursor to what awaits us in 2017. Right. So any message that is incongruent with the expectations of the Kenyan people must be dealt with accordingly and decisively.
Okay.
Before I address the Udamaki issue, allow me to address the lower turnout of voter registration in Western Kenya.
Yes, very quickly because of time.
Yes, this is happening because of, it's like a protest. Yeah, the message they've been sending to their leaders is to give them a solution. They've been doing this before, and what they're achieving at the end of the day is a failure. So that's why I'm encouraging our people. I'm just responding based on what my brother was saying. Whatever they've been doing is just a protest, that we've been doing this before, but we don't see the result in terms of victory after our vote, after we voted for our candidate. So what I would encourage them, let them come out in big number. We have this solution. Let them follow my footsteps, and we are going to reach Canaan. Now, the Udamaki thing, I would not dwell so much because I don't speak Kikuyu. But I don't think even if it means fish, then I don't want to challenge that. Or if it means kingship, it doesn't matter. Even us, as the Luo nation, we speak deep Kijaluo. We can either counterattack the current opposition leader to talk to the Luo nation to come and join us so that we can give our current president, Uhuru Kenyatta, a backup for his re-election.
Ben, yes, the president is a symbol of national unity. The president is not a symbol of regional unity. And if he was doing an interview with a local FM station in vernacular, I doubt whether he would have been thrown away by the management if he insisted on speaking in English or Swahili. The radio station would have still allowed him to do that. And I never ever saw President Kibaki or President Moi address a national issue like voter registration using the local language, using the mother tongue. Because we're in a very polarized sector today as a society, people are looking at the president and his body language and the language which he uses to communicate to people and giving it all manner of meanings. And if you read literature in high school, you'd be told that you can use a proverb, an idiom, and in the ordinary way, for us, we may think that they're talking about fish, which you need to get in a restaurant, but it's got a hidden deeper meaning, and it's only people whose mother tongue is that language would understand this. So I think maybe moving forward, and this is not limited to President Kenyatta, it's all leaders to use the national languages when engaging with Kenyans.
All right. Benson, let's take yours as a final thought, comment on this. Yes, Benson? Right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My last comment, Ben, is I would just like to urge Kenyans. This is their democratic right. Let them go out and register as voters. I think the media can do a very good job individually. You can do a very good job. You can influence friends through the social media. And as much as we live in a very polarized country, I think Kenya is a great country for all of us. And I would like to urge especially the young people to be very interested in the voter registration and look to it that they can only change the leadership of this country by the power of the voter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Benson. That is where we leave it. Benson Cheserek, political commentator, joining us live from the county of Uasin Gishu from our Eldoret studios. And the gentleman in studio this morning, Dismas Mokua, political analyst, Bonke Komwai, Jubilee activist, Jared Okello, court strategist, and Brian Bogua, Jubilee strategist. Thank you guys for coming.
You're welcome.
So we leave it. Be sure to join us every Sunday morning between 10 a.m. and 12 noon as we dissect the big political issues in this republic in the run-up to the 2017 general election. I'm Ben Kitili. Bye for now.